You are listening to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, episode 138, What's Possible with Josh. Welcome to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, where we take a research-based, trauma-informed, and results-focused approach to quitting porn. This approach has been revolutionary and changed thousands and thousands of lives. I'm your host, Sarah Brewer. Hey, you guys. Welcome to today's episode. We have our final What's Possible episode of the year. I don't think we'll do any more this year. I recorded a bunch and this is the last one that we've got. We'll see. Maybe I'll reach out and see who else has great stories that we want to bring on the podcast. I would be interested to hear your perspectives on this. Do we want more? Let me know. You can let me know via Instagram. You can let me know via email, support@sarahbrewer.com. Let me know. Before we hop in, I just want to let you know we have that ecclesiastical leader training that is live. So it's $25 for any leader. It can be, youth leaders, congregational leaders, anyone who works with people who are trying to quit porn or are doing lessons and teachings on pornography. We've got a really great leader training for you on that. You can sign up for that, sarahbrewer.com/leader-training. All right, you guys. Enjoy this episode. Hey, you guys, welcome to today's podcast episode. Today we have another What's Possible interview, and our guest today is Josh. Josh, do you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hey.
We're so glad to have you here. So excited to have you. So you're a member of Overcome Pornography for Good, and you're just going to kind of share with us your story, and it's just an opportunity for us to celebrate you and everything that you have done, and then a really beautiful opportunity for everyone else who's trying to get to where you are to find hope and to find some connection with your story. So I just love these. I'm so excited. Let's hop into it. Why don't you just, kind of give us a timeline and tell us a little bit about your story?
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share my story. My story with porn started when I was 12 years old, when I first got exposed to porn. I think that's probably a pretty typical timeline for a lot of people. But I was sort of immediately hooked and also immediately just got this sense that this wasn't right, that this wasn't a good thing that I should be doing. So it also sort of immediately came with shame. And so thus started my journey, not just with porn, but also with the shame and trying to hide it. And lots of failed attempts trying to get out.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's common. There's the initial viewing. Do you remember why? Like, did it just pop up somewhere, or were you curious about sexuality or?
Yeah, I was curious. Yeah. I still have this memory. I think, it was in the summertime. We went there's this river nearby where I live, and people rent inner tubes and get driven up to a river and float down. And I remember just seeing women's bodies on more display that day than what was normal. And I think it was just sexual curiosity. And so I think, from there, I think this was the days of dial-up internet. And so late at night, turning the computer on and that really loud sound and just hoping that my parents wouldn't wake up. And so, at first it was just searching the internet late at night.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So keep going. Tell us what's next.
So this stuck with me for a long time. Just to give you an idea of the timeline, I think when I joined your program, I think it had been 19 and a half years later or something. And the time in between there, I'm a Christian, and I would talk to a lot of people in my faith community about this, and it was a real struggle. I also worked for a Christian ministry during that time, and I tried very, very, very hard, and I'm a very intentional person and have had a strong will. So I applied all of that to accountability and porn blocking software, reading books and praying and intense fasting and scripture memory and just everything that I could think to will my way through the urges that I was experiencing. And I really had very, very little success. I'd say the majority of that time. I guess it was seasons anywhere from viewing a few times a day to maybe a few times a week. And I'd say there was only one time in that span that I didn't view for probably like 3 or 4 months. But aside from that, it was pretty consistent at at least a few times a week that I was viewing porn, and it just ate at me. I hated it. I hated it so bad. And I found myself very, very stuck. And ultimately, after trying really hard for a really long time, really discouraged and like jaded and like having a hard time believing. And yeah, I just ultimately came to believe that like, regardless of what I would tell people, I didn't believe that I would ever be free
Mm-hmm.
of porn. Certainly not, given how thoroughly I tried,
Yeah.
and how thoroughly I gave myself to the process of doing everything that everybody said and
Yeah.
trying really, really hard to get out. So,
Yeah.
um,
It always like really irks me when you hear people talk about people who are struggling with porn, like they're just not trying hard enough.
yeah,
Because that is so far from the truth for so many people. And just like as you're talking, I can just feel and anyone who's really struggled this for a long time can relate to like just that. Like it's
mhm.
excruciating how hard you're trying.
Yeah, definitely. I really relate with that. Friends of mine would attest to the fact that like when I put my mind to something, I like really go after it. And if I apply myself to something, I'm going to do it. And I never applied myself more thoroughly and more intensely to anything than I did to this process. And it was totally fruitless. So yeah, that was really, really frustrating and really discouraging.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So keep going. Tell us what happens next.
Yeah. So there came a point where, I sort of re-upped. I had kind of let my foot off the gas for a while in that place of discouragement. And I was like, one thing I haven't done before is seek professional help. And so I started looking around, came across a few different options, and ultimately decided to join your program. And at first, went through a couple of the modules. I think, to be honest, the only one that I made it all the way through was Urges, and I forget the name of the other one. But yeah, started going through that and felt really, committed to going through that. And it was helping my mind. I wasn't initially seeing really much in the way of results, but the crux really came when my wife left town for a few days for a trip with her mom, and I was home alone. And I wasn't doing super well as she went into the trip. But in addition to that, the like blocking software that I use broke right
Mhm.
at the exact time that she left. And
Good
so
timing.
yeah, so that led to like 4 days of just binge porn watching, and, multiple times a day, and worse stuff than what I would typically view. And so that was really, really, really like probably the lowest point that I had been at. And now I've also got a wife and I've got a son, and I feel like I'm kind of failing everybody and betraying my wife. I just reread my Learn and Move On worksheet, and the stuff that I was writing is just like, I am the scum of the earth.
Mm.
I am totally stuck. I am powerless against this. And so that also kind of became a crisis of faith to say, I've been following Jesus for like 13 years at the time. And it's like, what is this? God is the God who sets the captive free, and here I am bound. And that crux moment, that crucible moment, wound up being my total turnaround. Praise God that it went that way. And really what I came to realize in that moment was, in the aftermath of that binge porn session, was that part of what I learned was from your program and seeing the same like principles or themes in the Bible, that like it's not by my own will, it's not by my own effort that I'm going to get out of this thing,
Mhm.
but it's an identity level shift, and it's changing the way that I believe. And a few things really clicked for me in that moment. Really, the number one big one was changing the way that I believed and I thought. Like, what comes to mind is that it went from like experiencing an urge, and that urge to me had previously meant I'm addicted and this is inevitable, I'm giving in, to like, after this new belief became a part of my mindset, it changed to I'm experiencing an urge because I have viewed a lot of porn in my life, and that only makes sense. But that doesn't have any implications on me now. I'm free now. And this urge is just, porn working its way out of my brain. And so that really became like my primary mindset toward all of my urges, that like, oh, this is just a necessary part of detoxing my brain. I'm already free from porn, like I'm dead to sin, alive to God. I am no longer a slave. I'm a son. These ideas became core and central to what I was, the way I perceived myself. And I started living out of that place. And another really interesting thing about my story is that I was like, because porn is working its way out of my system, I'm probably going to look at porn again, but it just doesn't mean anything anymore. Like that was a really interesting thing to try to explain to people at that time. It's like, yeah, there's a good chance I'm probably going to look at porn a number more times. I don't know how many, but like, I'm probably going to keep looking at porn. But that's just because like, I'm just in the process of not looking at porn anymore. And it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just because I'm detoxing.
This is so good. I'm obsessed with this. I love it. I love it. It's so good. It's like we have these circumstances that, we really can't control, the urges. And up until now, you've been making these urges mean, I'm addicted, or like I can't get out, or, something's wrong with me. And for whatever reason, I would like to maybe hear more about this. It was this moment, after this wife, but for whatever reason, you had this identity shift where you just knew it was done. You were quitting. And so these urges anymore, they're the same thing, but now you're making them mean something totally different. And not even just the urges, but now any slip ups that you have. It's like the slip ups. Yeah. It's not because, I'm not slipping up because I'm stuck in porn. I'm slipping up because I'm quitting porn and I'm like getting rid of it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly where my mind wound up. Yeah. And honestly, it just came in a process of re-examining a lot of familiar passages of the Bible. James 2 talks about the kind of faith that saves. Jesus, like in him, we become the righteousness of God. Like these things just became like, I know to the depth of who I am that my experience doesn't define me, that like, only God has the ability to define who I am. And there's a mountain of evidence. I have, 19 and a half years. I don't know if I could calculate, 365 times 19 and a half years, like how many instances of evidence that I had that I'm stuck in porn, but it didn't mean anything anymore. Instead, I had this new identity that like, I am just, it doesn't mean anything. I'm free from porn. I have victory over porn. I've overcome it. And this is just a part of my story, and everything, all of the urges I experience, all the over desire I have, which definitely didn't go away, although it became so much easier. It that just meant to me that like, oh, this is a part of my story. This is a part of my history, but it has nothing to do with who I am. And it certainly doesn't mean that I'm addicted. It certainly doesn't mean that I'm stuck. Just as like, it's like a detox. It's just working its way out.
So good. So how did you come to this like identity or realization? How did you foster that? Did it come pretty quickly, naturally after this moment? What did you do?
Yeah, I think it was just like, again, just kind of meditating on these biblical ideas. Yeah, I think that was honestly, that was mostly it. I'd say it was like 2 or 3 weeks thereafter is really when I was examining these things. And I almost put like my attempt to stop looking at porn on hold, because I just like, it didn't matter. I just needed to focus on like these ideas. And yeah, I guess kind of the like end result. I mean, there's lots of end results, but that was actually in a couple of weeks. That binge porn session will have been 1 year ago. And I have not had a single instance of like, even honestly, the slightest level of like just dabbling in porn in any way, or like doing some of the like lower level. Like it just hasn't touched me since then.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was funny to think about. Like, I was like, I'm probably going to look at porn again. I don't know, a number of times. I don't know how many, but I'm probably going to look at porn again. And then that wound up not being true. So,
well, and that doesn't surprise me though. So let me just like say my few takes here on this, because this process, when you get rid of all the pressure around it, it's so much easier. So when you almost allow yourself to do whatever you need to do, and to have the slip ups, and to have the weak moments with this like just locked in identity that I'm quitting, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
that's when you can start to see progress. And you're not the first person that I've, heard this from or who has experienced this either. So when
Hmm.
people are like so afraid to let go of that, they like need to like hold on to it. No, like I can't mess up. I just,
Yeah.
I'm going to send them to your episode. Be like, go listen to Josh here because like allowing yourself to, I love that you use the word detox, however you want to think about it, allowing yourself just to go through the process of quitting might mean like allowing yourself to slip up. But once you
Hmm.
can be okay with that, and like you're just dead set on the identity and dead set on what you're creating, doesn't
Hmm.
matter. It's going to be so much easier. Anyways.
Yeah. What you said in one of your sessions about Pavlov's dogs and the second part in particular about how like they needed the stimuli enough times to
Mhm.
like have something be retrained. That really stuck with me where I'm like, okay, like in order for like I've experienced very many urges over the last year. And even just like a week or two ago was like a time again where something difficult was happening and I experienced more urges again. But it was just like, this is just a part of the process of my brain being rewired. And I will say that like, although I still experience urges, none of it is difficult
Mm,
anymore. Like it's this total change of like, it's just it's like all of the wind got taken out of its sails. Like it's just like, it's there, but like, it's not a struggle. I don't
yeah.
fight porn anymore. I haven't fought porn, I think, in a year. It's just been kind of just resting in this change in my self perception and change in the way that I view myself as somebody who is totally free from porn. And I haven't had to do any work since then, or at least I would say I haven't had to do any battle with porn since
There
then.
you
That's
go.
maybe a more accurate way to put it.
Yeah, when I talk about, we're not fighting anymore, we're going to get rid of this fight.
Hmm.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's not going to be a
Yeah.
battle anymore. I love that.
Yeah, the implications on of all of this have been pretty incredible. So, I think about how like earlier my wife couldn't leave the house without feeling like, oh, it's inevitable. Probably Josh is going to look at porn. Well, I'm gone. And then after it would happen, I would get angry. And ironically, I would take that out on her, even
Mhm.
though that felt like such a violation of what I should be doing. I don't know how to explain it, but that is what happened. And that's totally gone. Another really cool thing that has happened in this is that like life is full of hard stuff. And previously when something difficult would happen, I used porn to cope. So something difficult would happen. And then in the midst of my struggle, I would look at porn. And then because I feel miserable, I'm giving into other more base desires, more coping elsewhere, which would lead me to then totally drop the ball on whatever I'm doing, make my situation worse. And then what I realized more recently is that when I would eventually crawl out of that pit, porn became the focus of that issue. And all I was thinking about is how to not view porn next time. But the pain and struggles in our lives are meant to develop us in all kinds of different ways. And so my personal development was being totally shortcut by the fact that all of my issues became about overcoming porn instead
Mm.
of like learning how to be a better communicator or working through some issue at work or, something in my marriage, something with parenting, whatever it is. Like I've been able to, since I'm not distracted trying to work through my porn habit anymore, I'm able to like actually get the personal development that's, I think, intended to take place through some of the like harder circumstances in life. And that like, so the amount of like personal development I've had outside of overcoming porn has been really tremendous over the last years. I've been able to think
Well,
about other stuff. And
well,
it's like a favorite conversation now. Instead of like, if porn came up, I'm like, oh, like, how do I hide or how do I bring this up? And is it appropriate to talk about now? It's just like, oh, this is my favorite topic. I love talking about
uh,
porn. Like, let me tell you my story. It's amazing. And I
oh,
actually, I was that way from probably like 4 or 6 weeks after this. It's been a year now, but like I remember sitting down for lunch with somebody, and he had mentioned that he was dealing with issues with porn, and I'm like, I've got this amazing story of overcoming pornography addiction. Let me tell you about it. And then I was like, well, it's only been like 4 or 5 weeks,
I
but I
love it.
know I'm free.
I
And so
love it.
there's such confidence. So it's been a favorite topic for the last year or so. And I mean,
I love it.
I don't cope anymore. I've got more time. I'm more effective at work. It's just, yeah, it's been really, really awesome.
So awesome. I want to just point out a few things. I know I've said this a few times, but I'm going to say it again. I love how you're taking on this identity of, no, I'm free from this, while simultaneously being like, if I slip up, it doesn't mean anything about me going
Right.
back to it.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people are afraid to take on that identity because they're like, what if I mess up though? And it's
Yeah.
not true that I'm not free.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to come to a place where my circumstances didn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And my like really significant mountain of 20 years of viewing porn every day didn't mean anything about who I was. And future instances of looking at porn again didn't mean anything. Yeah, my identity didn't come from circumstance. It came for me from the word of God. And that was enough.
Love that. I love that. And what a beautiful example of using your faith too as like a beautiful tool,
Mhm.
like for this identity. I
Yeah.
love that. If your faith is not doing that for you, reevaluate and look at your faith maybe in a different light so that it can
Yeah.
start to have this impact in you. That's what it's supposed to be. It's
Yeah.
not supposed to be something that holds you down and makes you feel like you're not enough, makes you feel like you're unworthy. It's supposed to be something that like for you is setting you free.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Very, very empowering. So yeah, loved that.
And I love, that's a question I'll ask people too is, well, if you weren't struggling with porn, what would you be working on? Let's focus on that
Mhm.
for a little bit. Let's just take a break from spending all of our time on porn and let's see what else we can look at. So anyways, I love that. That's so fun. So fun.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
finally this problem of porn that we've been dealing with for 19 years. Like we're always going to have problems in life and like stuff to work through, but it's way more fun to have different ones than the same
Mhm.
one forever.
Yeah. And now, yeah, like I said, it's become such a fun topic. I'm excited to share this episode of my story with other people. Like every time I hear, I'm like, oh, you don't know how possible it is. You don't even know. Like I see the discouragement. I see, and I know because I lived it for years and years and years. I see the place that you're in that you don't think that this is possible for you. I didn't think it was possible for me. And then everything changed. And now it's been a year and I have the whole rest of my life ahead of me that I just thought would be forever. And, I'm like, you don't have to be stuck. Like, and what you're believing right now is not true, that it's going to be forever. So yeah, I'm super excited. Even, I've got two sons now. They're 9 months and 2 years, and I will be able to like have this conversation instead of, I was afraid that I'd be handing this stuff down, but instead I can help prevent over desire from happening in the first place or help them work through the urges that they will have. And this will be like an exciting topic that I'll be able to share with not just friends, but even, inside of my own family. So I'm just so stoked on this topic because I experienced how deeply dark it was to feel so stuck, and how light and good I feel about the topic now is just so exciting. And I really want the same for others. And hopefully I'll have the chance to have many conversations about it over the course of my life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely, you will. Is there anything else that you might say to someone who is where you were a few years ago or even younger? Like what's maybe like the last piece of advice you would give someone?
Yeah. A really big part of it would be just that you need to like not look at your circumstances, but look to someone else who, whether it's like someone with experience like you, Sarah, or somebody else in their life or scripture or whatever else it may be that has a higher perspective than what you're living in and has seen other people with worse stories than you get out of it, and borrow their confidence if you
Mm,
don't have any of your own, that this can be your story as well.
yeah, so good. That's part of the purpose of these. Borrow Josh's confidence and borrow his experience. And even if you're not totally there yet, I loved, and I'm curious if you experienced any of this, like where You're like, well, maybe it's possible. And let me just try on. Maybe it's not as hopeless as I thought it was. What if it is possible? Well, like just trying it on. And even if it doesn't feel like totally solid, because for you, it's really solid now. And maybe it was, maybe it happened pretty easily for you, but sometimes it takes some work to get there, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it was definitely through that like crucible moment where I like questioned everything over the course of probably 3 weeks. I think that like, but it took a very, very low point for me to get that way. But yeah, I think that would make sense that a lot of people would come to that realization of just coming through curiosity. That curiosity feels so powerful and totally capable of displacing these false beliefs about being stuck when you start to examine them and realize like it doesn't hold as much credence as you thought it would.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to share your story. It was
Thanks
so
for
helpful.
having me.
Yeah, it's so helpful and so good and so beautiful. And just congratulations. Just hope that you if you haven't yet, that you really celebrate yourself and you think about what that might be, whether that's like a journaling session or going, on a walk or out to a nice dinner, just to like bask in what you've been able to accomplish with God and with, this beautiful life you have, and just the really, really cool transformation you've had. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to have a big campfire with a bunch of guys and
there
tell them all
go.
my story.
Perfect. That's beautiful. I love that. All right, you guys, thanks for listening in today. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. I want to invite you to come and listen to my free class, How to Overcome Pornography for Good Without Using Willpower. We talk about how to stop giving into urges without pure willpower or relying on phone filters so that you can actually stop wanting pornography. We talk about how to stop giving up after a few weeks or months. And spoiler alert, the answer isn't have more willpower. And then lastly, we talk about how to make a life without porn easily sustainable and permanent. If you're trying to quit porn, this class is a game changer. So you can go and sign up at sarahbrewer.com/masterclass, and it is totally free.